Welcome to Japan Business World. Let's get started with the Japan location. Japan is located in the continent of Asia and covers 364,555 square kilometers of the land and 13,430 square kilometers of water. Japan is the 62nd largest nation in the world which have total area of 377,985 square kilometers. Unlike the United States, Japan does not have any states, but includes 47 different prefectures or districts all over the Japan. The capital city of Japan is Tokyo. The total population over here is 127 million, which is only almost a one-third area of United States. The official language is Japanese. However, there are more than 5 other languages too. Majority of people follow Shintoism and Buddhism as a religion. The weather is really good and soothing in Japan as it doesn't get any bad in summer and winter. The median age for Japan is 45, however a little over the United States median age 37. The GDP for Japan in 2014 was 4.602 billion, whereas United States had 17.348 billion for the year 2014. Now that we have done with introduction, let's move on to political aspects.
Japan's political system is a parliamentary representative democratic monarchy. This means the system is fairly similar to the US. It consists of a Supreme Court, a bicameral legislative parliament, and an executive branch. The executive branch consists of two pieces. It is headed by the Prime Minister, who acts as the head of the cabinet, and the Emperor, who serves a primarily ceremonial role in government nowadays. Japan's Rule of Law Index indicates a similar trend to that of the US. The influence and authority of law within Japanese society is slightly less than that of the United States. Current metrics score Japan at a 1.41 and the United States at a 1.6. Corruption is slightly more rampant throughout Japan following the worldwide recession of 2008 until 2012, when Japan's CPI returned to a very similar score as the United States, in the low 70s. Japan's strong scores are a result of unfair competition acts and strong penal codes that limit corruption and bribery. Japan's automotive industry is a strong component of the economy. Vehicles are the leading export of the Japanese at 24% of exports, followed closely by other machinery and equipment at 21%. Japan primarily imports minerals, gas, oils, and fuel from other countries heavily at 29%. Foreign direct investment in Japan is significantly lower than that of the United States for both inward and outward stock. Unemployment rates in Japan are lower than that in the US. This is due likely to the highly masculine traits of Japanese citizens, as well as their inclination to avoid uncertainties. GDP per capita in Japan is growing at a rate similar to that of the United States, even though the total current GDP in trillions has the United States with a distinct advantage over that of Japan. This is likely seen as a result of a different size and labor force for the Japanese. By using Hofstede's cultural insights, we can make several comparisons on cultural differences between Japan and the United States. Japan's power distance scores indicate Japanese society is moderately based on hierarchy, whereas it is less so in the United States. Japan's low individualism scores indicate more of a collective mindset as seen in many Southeast Asian countries, as opposed to highly individualistic mindsets in the United States and other Western countries. Basically, this means the Japanese have more respect for others. A high masculinity score tells us that Japan is a highly competitive nation. Employees are seen as workaholics and perfectionists. In addition to being hardworking, Japanese workers like a sure thing. This can be seen when comparing uncertainty avoidance scores with the United States. Japan is a very risk-averse nation, whereas in the US we believe more in no risk, no reward mentalities. Japan maintains many rituals and traditions from their past, although they are influenced by changes currently. Their high score of pragmatism reflects this. Japanese residents view things over time, not simply on a short-term basis. Indulgence is not as rampant in Japan as it is in the United States. Japanese citizens have a more natural intuition to control urges than American citizens.
Japan is one of the world leaders in technological exports, everything from automotives to integrated circuits. Electronic equipment alone makes up over 15% of Japanese gross domestic product. In addition to being one of the technological powers of the modern world, Japan also spends a great deal of its gross domestic product on research and development. In 2015, Japan spent about 15% more on research and development than the United States did. Up until the 1970s, Japan heavily relied on international trade partners for fuel, but in more recent decades, they've shifted their focus towards becoming independent and capable of producing their own nuclear energy. Nuclear energy provides Japan with about 35% of their electricity. Japanese companies such as Sony, Panasonic, Canon, Hitachi, and Nintendo are considered technological industry leaders and have had large market shares in their respective industries. However, as the general workforce ages in Japan, many of these companies who were once leaders have begun to struggle to compete on an international level thanks to globalization and the growth of the internet. In terms of technological invention, Japan is again a world leader, having invented many practical items like CD players, commercial digital recorders, lithium-ion batteries, pocket calculators, and so on. Where American research and development often tends to focus on profitability due to American investors, Japanese research and development is a little bit more methodical and seeks to create new inventions or ways of doing things. Although Japan is a small country, its beauty is still encapsulating. In terms of size, Japan is about 146,000 square miles, or roughly the size of Montana. Although the country isn't necessarily large relative to Western countries, the country still has varying climates in its north and south regions. Regarding construction and urban planning, Japan has very loose zoning laws, allowing businesses to operate in a broad range of areas. While on a local level this may be concerning, for business seeking opportunities in Japan, this could be great news as it allows them to operate in an area that they would not probably be able to in a comparable domestic location. Japan has also experienced a brief decline in Environmental Performance Index from the years of 2000 until about 2014, but since has steadily been on the up and making improvements in regards to EPI. As is the case with most countries, there is still ample room for improvement. Japan ranked poorly in several areas by Yale's EPI research team, such as air quality, agriculture, fisheries, and climate and energy. As a result of overfishing and dependence on fish in the Japanese diet, many of the world's largest species of fish, which inhabit waters near Japan, have been on the decline. Species like the Atlantic bluefish tuna have plummeted in population to nearly that of 20% of what it was in 1975.
The great nation of Japan is a well-run, democratically ran nation. Individual property rights are very well respected, very similar to they are in the US, maybe even more so. The legal and political environment is also very similar to the US, except for the fact that corruption in Japan is significantly lower than the US, and there's also a much higher degree of honor in Japan. Physical property rights in Japan are good, not as good as the US, but they do show, physical property rights do show a high level of country. Also, intellectual property rights, which are a big issue right now, are well protected in Japan, but not quite as well protected as they would be in the U.S. Oh shit, I don't know if I got this. Looking at the SWOT analysis of Japan, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and strengths. The strengths of Japan are it's the world's fourth largest economy. It excels in technology like no other country on earth. Best automaker in the world. Low tariffs. Good relations with the U.S. The weaknesses, though, small but maybe it. Small English-speaking population. Sales tax recently raised by 3%, not a big deal. Economy has regressed. There has been the Fukushima nuclear disaster, which set them back by the tsunami. There's a lot of emerging opportunities for manufacturing. They're very big on the technology field, cameras, robotics. So that's where I see Japan being in the future. The threats to Japan are global political uncertainty. What I mean by that is other countries such as China and Taiwan making more steel and dumping it to bring the price down to hurt Japan, and other tactics of the like. Thank you for watching this video.